Good afternoon from the UK, and good evening, good morning, and I think even good night to one or two in New Zealand. Welcome to our first international webinar. We're very excited about this, to join up so many around the world. We're expecting over 100 participants today. My name is Keith Newton. So I'm the International Secretary General for the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. And our theme today is best practice responses to the COVID-19 crisis. And we plan to bring you a very global perspective to that subject. Our three speakers today, so we welcome our President, Dr. Radzak Malik from Kuala Lumpur. We welcome Zainab Awad from CILT Egypt. And we welcome Gayani Dalwis from CILT Sri Lanka. So I think that's all the housekeeping. I will stay as the host throughout the webinar, but I want to hand over to our international president, Dr. Radzak Malik, just to introduce the importance of our response as an institute to support our members and other professionals throughout the transport and logistics world. So Radzak, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. Thank you very much. A very good and pleasant day to all. To those in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. Time in KL now is 7 p.m. Just past few minutes. And rain just stopped outside. I hope you all in the best of health and doing what you are supposed to do in your own country. Now, welcome to our first international webinar. This is important part of our response to the current issues facing our members and our profession across the world. It might seem that this is a crisis. It is in terms of the people who are infected and the families who lose a loved one. It is, though, a moment when we need to stand up to our responsibilities and take leadership. We will be remembered either as the profession that dealt with the issues constructively and seized the opportunities, or the profession that went into total lockdown. Our CILT response is to use our strength of working together, sharing international business examples as part of our global best practice resource to help you think about and determine appropriate responses locally. Please share your experience and complete your research. We want to build an understanding of the global situation for the supply chain, situation for the logistics and transport sectors, and share best practice globally as a result. I have asked all members and branches to carry out local research and build up a local response to a series of questions. It will be regretful for all of us during this time of pandemic when we are facing reality, the bitterness, the difficulty that really hampers our logistics, supply chain, and transport fraternity. If we are going to do research after the COVID-19 pandemic gone, it is purely academic. But if you do research now, during the time where real-time experience will bring up and definitely a solution, a finding will be a masterpiece for the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport all over the world. Learn from others, share experience, and today you will hear how in Egypt and Sri Lanka, they are leading the profession. Each country, CILT, should build its own plan to do the same. Join our online discussions and participate on our international and branch social media platform. Vilat and New Generation are already holding interactive webinar discussions. And I saw that even Australia, CILT Australia with their logistics and transport, association in Australia is also talking about the effect of COVID-19 to the industry. And all these webinar discussion, you can use conferencing platform. We will be launching the CILT forum to provide a platform for online chat, discussion, and support. Now, before I say my conclusion, as I always remind everyone that time is an essence. Our first job or assignment is to do research on impact of COVID-19. I would like to also suggest in our series of webinar, because the new normal is already in front of our eyes. Of course, COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the reality of it. The world today very much depending in first mile and last mile delivery. They are bringing food for us. We cannot be, because social distancing, because of all this pandemic and all that, suddenly the first mile and the last mile delivery pops up to be a hero of the front line people. Now, there are things in general that we would like to raise. We would like CILT not to say to champion it, but let us also talk about how the SOP for these new frontline heroes. Not only that, they are going to brave themselves with the pandemic, with the road accidents, the risk of accidents, and then hygiene and so many things. I don't want to deliberate here at the moment, but I'm just only giving you what we are going to discuss more. So please complete your assignment, especially this local research on the impact of COVID-19. Later, we'll have some other things to do. We are locked down. We cannot move anywhere. I think the best possible thing to do is we talk through technologies and we discuss things that has common interest to the industry, to the people, to the world, to the community at large. Now, last but not least, I would like to wish that our discussion will be fruitful, and please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radzak. Thank you for that that message, which will prove to be the main approach that we're adopting across the Institute. I'm just going to take a few minutes just to build on what Radzak was saying there. And we will talk at the end of the webinar as well too about the next steps, just to remind you. But yesterday I heard mentioned that the word crisis, so the word crisis, this may be known to some of you, but the word crisis in Chinese is actually in two characters. And those two characters, the first character is the word or the Chinese character for danger. And the second character is the Chinese character for opportunity. And that's very much how we've been approaching it in the planning over the last week. And I know the remarkable thing is how many of you are joining us across the world in that, looking not only at managing the danger, because that's a very important part of our response, but also looking at the opportunity. I'm going to ask Jasper if he would just share the one slide that we have got today, which is our plan on a page. So this is our CILT International response to COVID-19 that's been endorsed by the trustees. And it's just encouraging you. We will share this and continue to share this on a broad front across the CILT world. But our responsibilities really are very much to our members and to the wider profession. So when I speak about opportunity, when Radzak speaks about opportunity, the opportunity is for us to perform that role across the wider supply chain, logistics and transport community. And we've broken that task down into three main areas: leadership, membership and education, and finances. So very much on the danger side is we have to provide the guardianship both internationally and locally around our finances in this period of instability and threat. But equally, there are some opportunities out there, and countries are being able to realize that depending on the status of lockdown and dependent on the status within the local situations in terms of how they provide a service for their membership and for those students and those potential students who can train. So looking at opportunities to build online capability and an online offering. And we're leading that from an international viewpoint, but equally we would like you to focus on that locally too. And then importantly over this, all of this is the leadership. And it's with great encouragement that I see things happening. I'm a member in the UK, and CILT UK is very much taking a leadership role with government and with other bodies collaborating to respond to the situation in the UK. And we have chosen the examples this morning from Egypt and Sri Lanka, but it's very true that across the CILT world, others are doing the same. So look at your local needs, your local situations. They will be variable. They will require a local response from your country organization, but we intend to help and support that with this sharing of global knowledge and understanding across our family. And it's our family and the aspect of that being stronger together is one of the enablers that will enable us, that's been built over a number of years, that will enable us to take a leadership position in these very different times. We're now going to share how two country organizations have responded to the crisis over the recent weeks, to give you some ideas and to shape on things that they are doing and things therefore that you could look to do in your own territories, in your own environments. So I'd like to pass over now to Gayani. Gayani is the president of CILT Sri Lanka, and Gayani is going to share with us their response in that country. Gayani.
Thank you, Keith, President Radzak, and Zainab, and all those participants who are there. Ayubowan, this is the customary way of saying greeting by Sri Lankans, and that means may you live longer. So that is really important in a crisis situation like that when everybody is very stressed over this COVID-19 disease. Thank you, Keith, once again for giving an opportunity to share our experience from Sri Lanka. We will share some key things that we have done in our country So how I will structure my speech is that I will first talk about the current situation in the country, what we have done, and in the end, I will say as CILT, how we have responded to this new challenge and what we are doing about it. So that's how I'm going to structure my presentation. So if you just, if I just give you a bit of a background about Sri Lanka, we have a 21 million population. We are an island nation. We are just below India, tip of India, and we call Pearl of the Indian Ocean. And our square area is 65,332 square kilometers. If you really look at as of now, Sri Lanka has 321 cases, COVID cases that we have identified in the country. We had 7 deaths, and to date, 104 people have recovered. And if you look at a little bit of statistics, fatality rate, Sri Lanka's fatality rate is about 2.18%. And if you look at the global average, it is 6.93%, just to give you a perspective. And if you look at the recovery rate also, Sri Lanka is 32.4% when you compare with the global average of 27.17. So, I mean, we are slightly better than the global average, and we can be happy more so, especially because of the recovery rate, I would say. I will just give you a bit chronological order how this happened in the country. The first case, the corona case, was detected on the 27th of January in our country. That was a Chinese tourist. When she was leaving the country at the departure terminal, our authorities during the temperature check was able to identify that. And then she was brought and quarantined and was hospitalized. So that was our first case. And I mean, just one day before that, because there was a prevalence of the disease around the world, therefore our government on the 26th of January set up a national action committee to look at ways and means to respond to this challenge. So they were somewhat ready when this happened, just one day before. And then we were managing, and government was giving a lot of instructions for people to protect ourselves. The social distancing was identified and the mask. And it came to a point that everybody started wearing masks, and we were out of stock of masks. And the price normally of a mask is around 20 to 50 rupees, and it went up to 500 rupees. And it came to a point where the government had to put, initiate a price control for masks. So it came to that at that period. But having said that, we were okay for about a month and 2 weeks. And then on the 11th of March, the first local case after the Chinese lady recovered and she went back to China, we were okay till about 11th of March. And on 11th of March, a local tour guide who was with an Italian tour travel group got contracted. Now, from January to March, what happened was we didn't close the borders immediately. What we did was, the control measures we took was, we had special quarantine and checking for certain tourists coming into the country from certain countries, like Italy, Iran, and various countries. So we had special at the airport quarantining and checking and all that was happening. So that was the kind of work that was there. And the companies, the factory operations, and the people were managing day-to-day affairs, taking limited precautionary measures, ensuring social distancing to some extent, and wearing the masks. And then with the 11th situation, government took, since then, the next day, that was on the 13th, schools and universities were closed with the identification of the first local case. And then government declared a holiday the next day, and then 4 days of working from home for everybody in the country, public and private. And it didn't improve, so therefore government took a decision to impose a curfew across the country from 20th of March and up until now. Now, Sri Lanka is geographically divided into 25 districts. Out of the 25 districts, Western province, where the capital city is there, and also adjacent districts were affected. So therefore, for these 4 districts out of 25 were having stringent curfew timelines. It was not lifted for the last so many weeks, and yesterday it was to be lifted, and then again they extended because we had we identified few more cases. So that is how the situation evolved in the country in terms of identifying. And I mentioned now so far we have 321, and then with 7 deaths. How we managed the situation in the country was the moment the curfew was imposed, the government stopped all incoming passengers from the airport as well as from the port, the cruise ships and all that, and we didn't allow any passengers to disembark from the cruise ships as well as from the airport was closed. So that is how we stopped, influx of tourists coming to the country, and those who were in the country, stuck in the country over a period of time, we allowed the aeroplanes to come and then take them and go to their own countries. And then what happened with the whole process, the whole country was homebound, and then the issue was how do we feed everybody, how do we supply goods. So government made logistics and transport and supply chain an essential service. With that, and also port operation, airport operation, and all related, and also certain health services and other related industries were made essential services. And with that happening, logistics industries slowly start to operate. And there were restrictions at the port also. We allowed only essential items, and the government identified certain essential items, and perishable stuff were allowed to be released. So in the with respect to the public, there was a huge problem because Sri Lanka modern trade, the supermarkets and retail services is only 20%. So we are used to buying things from wholesalers and normal small mom and pop shops in the country. So when everybody is homebound, how do we send goods to them? That was a huge challenge for the country. So there is a government-owned supermarket chain in the country. So they immediately tied up with a local Uber version, Pick Me in the country to distribute goods. And private sector supermarket chains were inundated, and they couldn't manage the cope up with the demand, and because their systems were not ready to accept this kind of a huge demand, and they had to do the upgradation of the systems and all that. On top of that, medicine, how do we do the delivery part? And that was one of the important part. So government then tied up with the postal service, because luckily Sri Lanka has a very good public health service which is free. So therefore, those who are registered with the hospitals, the delivery of medicine was done through the postal services to their doorstep. And anybody who buys things on a prescription from pharmacies were asked to send it through WhatsApp, your prescription, and then they will be delivering to the doorstep. So initial first week, there were huge challenges in the market, where the industry couldn't cope up, especially the groceries, the retailers, and the fresh food suppliers were unable to do that. But now I think over the last 3-4 weeks, what we have realized is a lot of small timers, the neighborhood small little supply chains have evolved, and they have figured the art of managing deliveries to the doorstep using technology. And there's a resurgence of the e-commerce market has emerged in the country. On top of that, one big thing happened during this period is because people couldn't move, things that we couldn't do in the past became somewhat of a reality. Now, tea auction is not happening in an electronic way. So this actually paved the way for us to run the tea auction. After 137 years, electronic auction was happening, e-auction was happening, and that is a huge win for us. And it's a blessing in disguise. And also at the port, I mean, lot of electronic documentation, which we were even struggling to get for a long time. Now the ports, various authorities are now accepting electronic delivery orders, the banks. And it came to a point where now banks have started delivering money to your doorstep. And last week, one of the banks have tied up with this company called Uber equivalent locally, Pick Me, and they are delivering money to your doorstep. It has come to that level, right? So I think people are a bit enjoying things delivered to your doorstep now. So post-COVID, I think we need to understand how we need to manage this extension if it's going to happen. Okay, so let me now talk about the main thing that worked for us in curtailing the spread of COVID virus in the country. So the number one thing is, in the absence of technology, like in the other Western countries, how we managed was, we also followed the tracking, tracing, and treating, the 3T approach, where effective use of military and the military intelligence was the key to our success in the country. And they were able to quickly, within a very short period of time, prevented the cluster formation. The moment they found the first contact and the second contact, they were able to, within a very short period of time, they were able to track and trace. To some extent using technology, some using, majority of the time, it was using military intelligence. And the second thing is strict enforcement of the curfew. And violators were actually put behind bars. It was tough. And work from home adopted by the companies, public and private. And export industry and agriculture industry and certain industries were allowed to operate. So they are operating at a 20 to 30% capacity level. And they also have other challenges, but then nevertheless, they are slowly ramping up depending on the availability of people and the facilities available. And third thing is the fact that certain sectors were made essential. It actually helped the supply and movement of goods. And that actually paved the way for small timers to emerge and develop their own small local supply chains. I think that is something that emerged during this period, because they are more nimble and more agile than the big players, and they are able to quickly respond to the demand for the neighborhoods. I think that is something that that emerged during the period. I think with all this happening, with the rest of the global supply chain is also coming to a standstill, government also has started the initiative to do local manufacturing, and there are a lot of medical related devices have been innovated and developed by local people. So I think that is something that we have seen in the past, didn't see that in the past, but you see a sudden enthusiasm with these young university and technical people in the country who have started doing that. That is something good for the country. And also there is a huge drive to revive agriculture using technology, and also to make agriculture industry more productive, and they have initiated that revolution on agriculture to ensure that we try to do that, because we spend about 200 billion Sri Lankan rupees on importation of food. And our local spend on food is around 50% of our salary goes for food, which is very high. And post-harvest loss in this country is around 30 to 40%. All these are supply chain logistics challenges. So if we can get involved and do that, I'll come to that later on, and we could have really contributed to the economy. And postal service, which was really not a kind of a dying service in the country with the emergence of e-commerce and all that. Now social media usage. So now I think we found a way to make use of postal service to make it productive to ensure and get them on the last mile delivery operation. So those are things that I think we developed. So I'll come to the second stage of my speech, where how did we as CILT contributed during this period. Now, if I mention the government machinery, initially they managed with the government sector officials and departmental officials. So they didn't involve the public sector and other agencies, but if we have any grievances, we were able to communicate to these task forces and was able to get information. So that's how we managed it. But we didn't want to wait until the government called us to do things. So what the first response from us is, we were going to have our annual general meeting on the 31st of March, and unfortunately we couldn't hold it because of that. So we immediately sent a communication to our membership that we will not have that. Plus we are trying to get ideas from the membership to see how we can contribute to this situation and improve the supply chain and distribution challenges that we experiencing during this time. So the first thing that we did was, we are good at knowledge sharing. So what we did was started the webinars, because there is a boom of webinars happening in this country and more people have started. So last week, we started a series of webinars with European Chamber of Commerce officials. So we believe in collaboration now, because I mean, I know Professor Richard Wilding says co-petition. You know, we should collaborate. We should not compete in this kind of situation. We must use, you know, our resources in a more collaborative manner and effectively use it. So we partnered with European Chamber of Commerce, and today, just a little while ago, we had the second webinar as well. So we plan to do every week on Thursday for the next 5 weeks, and we are talking and we are discussing different aspects in the industries that are affected. Then individually, CILT and WILAT, we've started motivational, because people are a bit you know, impacted, and they are emotionally impacted, and they don't know what's going to happen in the future. The jobs are at stake for some people. So we really want to do motivational initiatives. So we started that, and WILAT is having a session tomorrow. So again, WILAT is starting a series of webinars in the next few weeks. And the second important thing that we started was the Ideathon. We took, I mean, WILAT, YPF, CILT took the initiative when we formed the team, and then we launched our Ideathon, CILT Ideathon yesterday. And we are expecting people to register. So far, we've got 35 people who have registered, and we are going to do, we are going to close the ideas by 24th midnight. And with that, we expect to get ideas from people, and we will support these people to find investors and then try to implement these ideas and recognize them in our CILT award. So that's another initiative we have started to create the enthusiasm that our membership and general public have to improve the logistics and supply chain areas. Third thing is another initiative. The biggest issue that we have, as I mentioned to you, is the food imports and the food distribution challenges we have in the country. So therefore, National Science Foundation, a government agency, has approached the premier business school in the country, Postgraduate Institute of Management, and they wanted to partner with CILT. So we together now doing a project to improve food supply chain and distribution in the country, which we will be next week, you know, a meeting to discuss, e-meeting to discuss how we're going to plan that. So these are the three things how we have got actively engaged and took the leadership in the country by getting involved in knowledge sharing through webinars. Number two is, you know, collecting ideas through an Ideathon from our general public and our membership, because there's so much enthusiasm among them to do something to, you know, improve and make the supply chain more resilient. And the third thing is look at a long-term project, the special project where the food distribution is a huge challenge in the country. Government has set up a task force as well. How do we really use our knowledge using our members to do that? And finally, the fourth thing is we also got together as a CSR initiative. First, WILAT took the lead to, you know, supply some medical equipment items that the hospital who's treating these patients, we just had a collection, and then we did that. And also CILT is donating personal protective equipment to the Army quarantine centers, because one of the key things that we have been successfully doing is Army, the moment identify a group of people who are infected, the first level and the second level, they just take the whole community and quarantine in an Army center. So those places need a lot of personal protective equipment. So we have donated and collected. CILT will be handing over them to the hospital as well as to the Army during the course of this week. So all in all, I think, yes, it was an unfortunate situation that happened to the whole world. But nevertheless, like you mentioned, crisis, yes, it is a challenge, but we consider this as an opportunity as well. And everybody is now looking at new ways of doing. I think we are looking at this new normal in a positive sense, I think most of them. So our challenge is to how do you make and engage our membership, keep them really engaged and think positively and in a motivated way, so that they will think positively and then contribute to the agenda, so that we will all have a world where we will, once we have a cure, we will all can go back to our previous way of working, of course, in a new environment. So thank you, Keith, and all of you. I think the advantage for us is we can learn from each other. I think the powerful network that we belong to within CILT has really helped us, because globally, I reach out to a lot of people when I really need things. I think it has really helped us to connect. I think this is going to be the most powerful thing that CILT is propagating. Our network is really helping us to reach out to anybody, and this webinar series also will help us to learn from each other. So we can copy and steal with pride, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think that should be our mantra. Thank you so much, Keith. Sorry if I've taken a bit more time.
That's all right. No, that was perfect. So thank you very much. I think you rightfully said, steal with pride, all those ideas, and that's what we're seeking to do here, very much initially with the CRT focus, but with a focus on how we can support people in the supply chain. We've got a couple of questions, but they're very good questions. I'll hold those so we get 5 minutes at the end where we can just touch on those. They go into how we can influence and shape from a government viewpoint. But I'll hand over now to a second country perspective. So very different part of the world. We can see as we look across different countries that local actions are often different in many ways, some successful and some not successful. And then the impacts on the supply chain world is also different. So to give us a perspective, we have Zainab Awad, who heads up CRT Egypt, and we'll talk a bit about what's happening there and focus on their best practice response to the current crisis. Zainab, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. Thank you, Razdak, for your positive words, and thank you very much, Gayani, for your contribution. It's very interesting to see what was happening in Sri Lanka, because in Egypt it's a little bit different, and it was very interesting to see how things developed there and how we can learn from that. In Egypt, the numbers are a bit higher. Of course, we're a bigger country. We're more than 100 million in population. Our numbers are a bit higher, but they're still on the low side. We have, yesterday, the total number of reported cases was 3,490, with 157 cases yesterday alone. And also the number of deaths so far is 264. And again, we have 14 deaths yesterday. What the government was trying to do, basically since the start, is to try to minimize the impact on the economy. On the one hand, we were following what's happening in the world from early on, even before cases started appear here, and we were preparing ourselves, but the decision was to try to take a gradual and partial approach. So basically, we the government started introducing measures in March. Schools and universities were shut down on the 15th of March. And also a decision was made to have people work from home as much as possible. Female employees with children less than 12 years old were given leave if they couldn't work from home. And also shops and malls and sports centers and gyms and public activities, all of that was stopped since the 15th of March. But the curfew was only introduced on the 25th of March. On the 25th of March, we have a partial curfew. It's not a full lockdown. People are allowed to go around until 8 p.m. now. and the curfew is imposed between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. The reason the government took this approach was to try to limit the impact on the economy. Of course, supermarkets and pharmacies are exempted from this decision, so supermarkets and pharmacies are operating as usual. In Egypt, we have something interesting. We had home deliveries for years now. So people tend to resort to using this service. Not only online deliveries, because these are picking up more, but we have always had the opportunity of calling up to the supermarket or even the pharmacy, asking for the products and having them delivered to us. So we did not face many issues there to have the local, the already existing players functioning as before. This is generally the kind of intervention that was introduced. Of course, the military in Egypt is also active with the Ministry of Health to try to sanitize public buildings and public transportation facilities all the time. That was introduced from the very beginning, and trying to help whenever there is a case or discovered somewhere, they go in, of course, isolate, have the testing done, isolate the people, and even resume with the non-positive individuals who work in the different establishments. So in general, these are this is the approach taken in Egypt, and the hope here is to try to limit the impact on the economy. As a matter of fact, according to the IMF, it's expected that in 2020, GDP will actually grow in Egypt by 2%. This is much lower than what we saw last year, because we had growth at about 5.6%. But that's generally good, because for the MENA region, we expect to see a contraction of 3.3%. So such measures ideally will help us survive better the situation. We have, when we speak of transport now, let me get into the transport sector and the impact on transport and logistics in Egypt. Like many other countries, aviation was hit the hardest from the crisis. We have losses estimated at about 2.25 billion Egyptian pounds, which equates to 143 million US. Of course, since the very beginning on March 15th, we stopped all passenger flights, allowing people to visitors and tourists to go home gradually to their countries. Also, there is intermittently, we try to bring people who are stranded abroad back into the country. Yesterday, there was an average of 22 aircrafts going out to bring people home. And we also have the freight. Freight has not been affected in terms of cargo. The cargo airplanes are still going out. I think since the beginning of the crisis, there are more than 100 flights that were either pre-scheduled or were introduced due to the crisis. Egypt Air has also started to use passenger flights for the transport of cargo, especially to China trying to get additional medical supplies and equipment from there. So that's the situation in the aviation sector. We have, of course, road transport was affected much by the crisis. We have mainly our public bus service. We have the Cairo Metro. We have a subway only in Cairo, not covering the whole country, but it's very densely used by Cairo's. And we have definitely the Egyptian National Railways. They've been affected by the crisis, all this disruption at the beginning, and The reduction in demand is affecting their income generation, and they're also facing the challenge of increased traffic before the curfew hours, because before curfew, and since many businesses and many people are still going down and they have to be home at a certain time, we have a lot of traffic, and the government has responded by trying to support these institutions through regular sanitization, providing facial masks at the Cairo Metro, the national railways, of course, and providing a lot of communication and videos about how to deal with the COVID-19 in terms of safety, trying to stay safe and try to use masks and to the hand washing and all the other elements that the WHO has been recommending for people to use. Again, going back to freight, transport has not been disrupted from the very start. So as the case of Sri Lanka, it was considered as an essential activity. There are 9 different activities that are considered so, and logistics and transport activities are one of them. You have no curfew for the transportation of goods on the roads. Customs warehouses are operating as usual. We have the customs authorities, of course, they have reduced hours, but they're still managing their operations. The ports are operating quite well. There was, of course, a disruption at the beginning in February. We saw a decrease in revenues and decrease in volumes and traffic in the ports and in the Suez Canal. But interestingly, in March, things started to change and the volumes started to increase in both ports and the Suez Canal. Everybody's speculating for the reasons, of course. You wouldn't know for sure, but the main people are attributing this to the backlog that happened at the beginning of the supply shock, when China was not delivering as much as before, and then they started operating a bit back again. So the backlog is perceived to be one of the reasons, and the long-term contract, of course, that people have to commit to. So we do not know if this trend will continue or there will be changes in Q2 and 3 of this year. But so far, Q1 has actually, in totality, has seen an increase in terms of revenues and in terms of volumes when we talk about ports and the Suez Canal. What's interesting, I'm sure many of you have heard, because it's unprecedented, we have the CMAC, GM has announced that they will they'll avoid the canal altogether with the reduction in fuel prices. So they're thinking of avoiding the canal as much as possible and going through the Cape of Good Hope again. So that's unprecedented. We don't know how far this will go. We don't know what will happen to oil prices, and because it's always a matter of measuring your operational costs. So how far operational costs will be lower going through the Cape of Good Hope. This is something we see, and we'll see if this will be a general trend in the future, despite of the environmental implications of having longer routes in sea and having a longer time to deliver the goods. So this is an interesting development, but at the time, the Suez Canal Authority has been responding by decreasing the tolls before anything was announced, because of the challenges that the shipping industry is facing. So there are great reductions, and there are a lot of discussions between shipping lines and the authority to see the best scenario for the current situation and beyond that as well. So this is a general overview of what's happening in the logistics and transport sector. It's having a great effect, of course, despite of all the measures that the government is taking to mitigate the impact on the economy. But still, it's a huge shock, like in all other countries. Because the Egyptian economy is quite particular. Of course, there are other countries like that because we depend a lot on medium and small enterprises. So, of course, we're connected to the supply chain, the global supply chain, and we're affected by the supply shocks, and they have in turn resulted in a demand shock as well. So we're in a vicious cycle there with a reduction in supply and then a reduction in demand, then further implications and ripple effects on the rest of the economy, the banking sector, and in terms of credit line and defaulting on loans and all that. So that's there, but also we have another challenge related to the fact that most industries are reliant on medium and small enterprises, and we do not know how far these enterprises will be able to tolerate such a shock and for how long that will be. So that's a big challenge. Another challenge that people are trying to react to as much as possible is the fact that there is a high level of informality in the Egyptian economy. So we have 40 to 50% of activities are informal, with workers not having fixed contracts and not having social security. So they really depend on their daily work. So staying home for them, even if the government is trying not to have a full lockdown, is affecting the livelihoods of many segments of the Egyptian society. To that, of course, the government has intervened by introducing several measures for industry. There are several incentives. There are sort of a number of debt relief programs for aviation and tourism especially, and for other sectors that are heavily affected by the current situation. And also there are cash subsidies for the non-formal workers. The government has introduced a scheme where they're distributing cash subsidies to those who can declare and that they can do easily. It's not like they have to go through very rigorous procedures, but everyone that can show that they are suffering from the situation, the government is providing them with compensation. So this is basically the overall picture. Here in Egypt, CILT is following suit, following the guidelines of CILT International. We are trying to come across as the institute that people can come to for knowledge about the industry and technical know-how and best practice. So this is one key message that we're giving off to our members and potential members. At the same time, we have also we're initiating our webinars. We have a series of webinars that titled CILT Egypt Talks that we will hold on Tuesdays of every 3 weeks to discuss the overall impact of the COVID-19 crisis. We start picking up on general topics and then going into the specifics as the situation evolves and as needed by the industry locally. And of course, we're looking into online delivery of education with the accredited training provider, because again, the issue, and here International, I'm sure will come to us soon with the actions. The issue was not with the delivery, which because a lot of training providers, including HPA, the accredited training provider in Egypt, are capable of delivering online. It's with the examination and testing. So that is our key challenge. And these are broadly the actions that we have been taking so far.
Thanks. So thank you very much again for that perspective. And very different place, very different. the virus, although it's uniform across the globe, is having different impacts, and very interested to hear the impact on the industry there. So thank you very much, Stella.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you.
So we've reached the end of our time. I'm sorry, we'll next time round we'll probably dedicate a bit more time for some interactive questions. We are, as I say, recording the video, so that will be available to everybody. The third bulletin will be going out next week, which will pick up the supply chain response topic. And we will be back with another video in 2 weeks' time. But bear in mind that as a community, there is the WILAT webinars. So there's a program for that, which we'll be sharing and issuing, and the WILAT members have already engaged very well across the world. So that's proceeding. In Africa, the next generation are leading the charge in terms of a pan-African approach. And they have a webinar on Sunday. So there is lots happening. There are other things happening in other countries, which I can't give time to now. Radzak, would you like to just close the meeting, just to thank everybody and point the way forward?
It was a very solid and informative 1 hour webinar given by the panelists. I'm quite happy. This is the first time, but in fact, we have a lot to do, a lot of questions to answer, and these are all should be dealt with, and we should have more research on this. And again, I want to remind you the new normal that exists in front of our, what we call, our face now. And we need to actually discuss, and we need to tell the government what needs to be done to this new normal, especially those frontline heroes, you know, risking their life and all that, to do what is supposed to be done. And you cannot discount them. We cannot just say that, you know, they are just trying to get, you know, young people trying to get money and all that. But remember, their welfare, their life, their you know, whatever, you know, they are the future of the country, and we should take care of them. So I hope this is another teaser for me to get us to discuss and what best practice should we do for these people. So again, thank you very much. Stay at home, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and see you soon. Keep safe.